you asked me about the engines. Today, there's one at Brecon Castle. Okay, that is a 25-ton locomotive. It's an 060 built by Vulcan, sitting right outside. That was put there quite a few years ago when they stopped the trains there. There's one at the Nagar Center. Now, I came across that locomotive quite by chance. I was heading up the highway one day, and I just happened to see it. And I went in there, and I took some photographs of it. We had in Eugene St. Madeleine up until 1998, we had quite a few diesel engines there.
Right.
The Class 5s, which were the 204 horsepower 060s, 5 of them came to Trinidad, okay? Out of a total of 158 that were built by Hunslet. Okay, 69 went to work on British Rail.
Of that particular model?
Of that particular model, which is a 204 horsepower Hunslets. They became known as the Class 5s under the TOPS operating number system in the UK. And as I said, 69 went to British Railways, and the rest of them went all over the world to 8 different countries, 5 of which came to Trinidad. So there were those 5. Then there were the 179 horsepower, 2 of those that came here, one in 76, one in 70, right? And then there's the odd one out, which is D11, which actually was a Hudswell Clark engine, which was then rebuilt in 1976 by Hunslet and sent to Trinidad. Now, that engine came from Liverpool Docks in the UK. That worked the Liverpool Docks. So
before coming
to work in Trinidad. Okay, and that was the most powerful engine, 270 horsepower odd. That was an 060 as well, and that actually, it was in Eugene St. Madeleine. I'm told that someone has privately bought it, and they had it somewhere in Central. I'm trying to track down that individual now because I'd like to see that engine. That's a unique engine as well in Trinidad. I'm sure there were others built outside, but for Trinidad, that's the odd.
Do you know
out.
if it's been restored or if it's just in their possession?
I was told this morning that it was used as part of a fairground display. Oh. Okay, I've been told it has not been scrapped, but I would still like to track them down. What I don't know about are the 2 040s. Those I'm still trying to find out where those are. And I was down at Caroni this morning, actually, and I have contacts down there who are working on trying to find out that information. One of the Class 5s, I believe, has disappeared. I don't know where that's gone, but 4 Class 5s are still there.
Maybe it's covered in a field somewhere.
I'm hoping.
One day someone in their attempt to make a shortcut will come across it.
I'm hoping it's there. But the bad news is that the 5 steam engines that were in the field, after Picton was returned to the UK, I was told this morning that the remaining 4 were scrapped. They were cut into pieces and scrapped, which I think is a great shame. Because one of those engines was a 1908 engine. So,
but what is done with that sort of machinery if it's scrapped?
Well, it's scrapped. It's taken to the scrap heap and it's melted down and made into other things, right? I mean, remember that the price of metal was high, right? So there was all sorts of confusion when Caroni in St. Madeleine closed down because people were cutting the line. There were court cases with people just cannibalizing the system, right? So when you think about it, there's 22 miles between St. Madeleine and the Valley line going down to Barrapore. So all of that is open cane field,
so
open line.
Track
so people were just taking the track.
People's homes as mementos.
Well, but people, I think it was done on a much grander scale than that. I think it was, a lot of people went there and just took the track, right? The price of metal was high, so that's what happened. It's difficult to say who did what, but that's what happened.
Given that you have all of this technical data with regard to how the engines worked, where they worked, the loads that they pulled, their horsepower, their gauges, their wheel configurations, maybe it would be a good idea for the government to consult with you on what we should get now.
Well, as I said, I'm not a railway professional, a civil engineer, or anything like that. I'm not even a railway historian, really. I hate to use that term because I'm not really a historian, right? I've always had a love of trains,
yes,
and I've been gathering this information. I don't know whether the new system would have any use for that information. Honestly, I don't know. I look at it really from a historical perspective. I'm looking at what was there, and let's get that information before it's all gone.
Yes.
It was very difficult for me to find it. It took me years to get that information, and I think that one of the things that's helped me get more information was the fact that 20 years ago I did go and film the trains. I did take pictures. I did start learning about the ones that were there, so that people now that are in the UK that have this information, they want to see my film. They want to talk to me. They want to know, well, what's happening with it. And they're interested. So through them, I'm now beginning to get information that's even older information.
Yes.
And this morning it was very nice because I was able to meet with a few ex-Caroni workers, people that were, transport foremen and so forth. And they were so happy that someone's interested.
And nostalgic.
And we can speak about, exactly. And I want to hear their stories as well. I would like to get their stories because I think, you know, it's very important to capture their knowledge, their experience. I'd love to speak to people who've taken photographs. I'm not sure if you've heard of David Moore.
No.
But David Moore is an artist who painted pictures of trains. Well, he did paintings, artwork of trains, right?
Specifically here in Trinidad.
Yes, well, he's a Trinidadian, okay?
Yes.
He painted the train, the TGR. I have not met him. I'm trying to meet him, and I think I will eventually meet him. But he has done up to 6 or 7 paintings. And you can buy the prints. There's one of San Fernando Station, there's one at Curep Station, there's one he's done of Arima, there's one he's done at Cross Crossing, which was close to where I lived in South. These are technically sound pictures. The locomotives are absolutely as they were. And I think that I've got a copy of each of the prints. But he has been an inspiration to me in trying to get more information. The first time I realized that we had tender engines here was through his paintings. So I did a lot more research and actually became keener on the Trinidad government railways because of the paintings that he's done.
Enthusiast.
Well, I'm told that he's also, someone said he's obsessed with trains. Well, I hope he is, because then we'll have a good conversation.
Well, it's amazing because even as young boys, one of the first toys we're usually given is a train set.
That's correct.
The engine, the caboose pulling coal, the caboose pulling passengers. In Trinidad specifically, where do you think would be the best place to set up a railway museum? We have a maritime museum. We have the aircraft down in Chaguaramas that people can go and sort of look through. Where would be the best place to set up an almost, if not cosmetic, almost functional piece of machinery where people can actually walk through and understand what brought us from the era of sugar to oil to now? You
know, it's interesting you should say that, because to me, I'll give you some ideas. I think that Usine St. Madeleine would have been a great place to do it, because you had the loco sheds there, you had the skill, you had all those things, and you had a stretch of line which also had in that stretch of line part of what was the TGR from Golconda Junction to Debe Junction. That was a stretch of the old TGR. That was a line from San Fernando Superior, right? The fact that railways started in the Supero Valley, right, along the Supero River, the fact that railways started there, that would have been an ideal spot to put a railway living museum type of thing. Today, that's all gone. Yes. What I would say is that if you're going to do that in Trinidad and Tobago, you need to have it enclosed in an area where it's going to be safe. Today, Pointe-a-Pierre Station, to me, which has been restored, I think that would be the ideal place to lay track, because the station is still there, the old station. I think one of the signals is still there. A set of track laid there with a shed would be a great place to start a national collection of locomotives. So things that are left could all be put there.
A warehouse area.
A warehouse area covered so that it's no longer, the engines are no longer out in the elements. Would be a great place to have an open living museum, which eventually, hopefully, somewhere in the future, we might see something running again, perhaps. Yes. And if we were to do that, it is feasible to lay track back towards Claxton Bay. I'm not sure if you know, when you go down the hill from Pointe-a-Pierre towards Claxton Bay, there's a massive big girder bridge. I believe it's still there. I've got photographs of it. I hope it's still there. I don't know, but
there's, I believe the bridge is there, but there's road over some.
Well, the road goes under it. The road goes under it. Okay, it may be possible. I don't know. I've not been there. I'm planning to go down there this time I'm in Trinidad, but it may still be there. But even if you had a couple of 100 yards of track around the station, you lay the track, a passing loop in the station, and you have maybe a siding with the engines on there, that would be something that I think would be good. A national collection, especially now as we're trying to go back to rail transport. And I think the time is right that there's interest in the country about what we had in the past for railways. I think it'd be a great idea to do that.
Considering that we have these engines that sound almost historic in their own make, the Hunslet, the Kern Stewart, the Kitson, you sound so excited when you describe the models, which during their era was one of the most appreciated models that existed, that were used, and then to be sent to somewhere like Trinidad and Tobago, because it's such an ironic twist of how things are happening, in that we have, as a developing nation, we are probably considered moving towards so many things, but we're in possession of so many historically important pieces of machinery.
Right. That's right.
We can share this with the world.
That's right. You know, we're the custodians of that, right? We should be taking care of these things. I think it's absolutely brilliant that we have that Hunslet locomotive sitting at South Quay.
Yes.
And I think it's brilliant that we have the Kitson sitting in San Fernando, Harris Promenade, which is where the Sapero tramway started. I mean, that's where the first station was, right? So I think it's great. And when you look at it, if you look at the percentage of locomotives, steam locomotives that were preserved in Britain, I think we have a similar percentage in Trinidad. Maybe it's 2 or 3, but it's still a great percentage compared to what we had before. You know, when the Trinidad Government Railway closed, there were probably about 35 engines in service. I've seen reports of a train every 10 minutes running out of Port of Spain, which is now called City Gate, running out of the station. You know, even when the rest of the line was closed, there was one short section to San Juan, right? That continued to run.
Constantly operating.
And they ran, I have a report that said right up to the last day, they were running a train every 10 minutes. And the interesting thing is there was one steam engine still running on the last day. They still kept one engine running, which was fantastic.
This is absolutely marvelous. As usual, Glenn, we've run out of time.
Absolutely.
And there is so much more that we have to learn. So hopefully with the establishment or the move towards establishing a historic place where we can appreciate these engines, we can once again look at the glorious past of Trinidad and Tobago as we move towards Vision 2020. Thank you so
Thanks very much indeed
for all of your time and for coming in. This has been the News Extra. Today with me has been Mr. Glenn Beaton, railway enthusiast, I would say historian as well. You've been watching the News Extra. On behalf of the news crew here at Win TV, have a safe and a pleasant evening. Thank you.
And no matter how long it takes, and no matter for goodness sakes, you'll be gone, you'll be gone, you'll be gone, you'll be gone.